Greetings, Toffees. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Frontier. James here, joined by Ryan and the newly married Shan Khan. After Everton defeated Palace, the last unbeaten Premier League side has fallen, and Everton remain unbeaten at the new Hill Dickinson Stadium. We are going to get into dissecting the match just about a little over 48 hours after the fact. It was too good a match not to talk about. So before we get into it, obligatory, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Follow us on socials, join our Discord, like and subscribe on YouTube, all that good stuff. Without further ado, we go to our summary quote of the match. I went with BG from X, who said, "The changes at halftime had a positive impact, but the penalty felt like the true turning point. Really happy that Alcaraz got some extended time today, as I feel like his ability to push forward is needed in the squad to get the most out of the other attacking players." I think that's a great summary, sets the stage for some good discussion. We wind the clock back to pre-kickoff and look at the Everton lineup, and Moyes made some interesting changes. I was actually very curious to see how this would play out. We asked last episode what he would do without Dewsbury Hall. We get Tyler Dibling on the right-hand side. We get Njai in the middle, and Thierno given the nod over Beto. Your guys' thoughts on the changes Moyes made? We know how it played out. It did not go super well. But in principle, up front, it seemed interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it had much to do with the personnel, why it didn't play out. I liked the changes. I thought it was good to put Njai down the middle. I think it'd been even more interesting to put Jack down the middle, but I think then maybe you're changing too much, and it takes away an orientation that you probably want to keep, at least to some extent. But no real problems with the changes. I think the problem we have is ultimately the back line is so static and limiting from a standpoint of deploying any sort of different changes or tactics. But yeah, I think the tactical setup was the bigger issue.
Yeah, like Ryan said, I think the changes from Moyes made sense. It was nice to see Njai down the middle. I feel like we've been asking for that for almost years, even though he's really not been here for that long, right? And it was good to see Tyler get some action. I think it was a pretty low pressure situation for him just to get some minutes in. For me, it was more Thierno, and I think just given what we've seen on socials this week, right, with him just, I think, getting into a bit of just a tough time. I think he's just like any young striker at Everton. It's not an easy position to be in, right? We've seen it with Moyes Keane. We've seen it with others. I think we expect a lot from them, and of course his goal tally at Villarreal and Basel would expect you to think that, but it's going to take time. He's a young player, and I think he's still acclimating to this league, and I think we just need to be patient with him, and I understand the frustration, but I can promise you there's no one that wants to do more for the club right now than Thierno himself.
And look, he's facing a tough back line. Palace, in particular, have flexibility in those back three. They can really match up against players. They have strength and athleticism on either side. Getting into the Palace lineup, I think the biggest factor is that they had to play away on Thursday.
Yeah, and that's new for them, right? It's just obviously with being in Europe for the first time, they won 2-0, right? So it's, business is done as usual. But like you said,
not a short trip though, Sean. It's not like they were playing.
Well, not a short trip. Short trip. But then also too a pretty thin squad, very talented squad, but as we've kind of mentioned, you look at that starting 11, it's very good, and they've added a few pieces in the summer. You look at, Christancis Uche, and you look at, of course, keeping Mark Gahey, right, which I think is a massive boost to them, even though they'll probably lose him for free in the summer. But that back line has been playing with each other, right, since the start of last season. And so you get Lacroix, you get Chris Richards. There's a lot of familiarity there. And, of course, Dean Henderson, not enough has been spoken about him. He's done a really, really good job for Palace, really being the number one for them. I think the midfield is kind of where their weak point is, and I say that, kindly, in that, Daisha Kamada and Adam Wharton, right, they're incredible passers, of course, specifically Wharton with the ball, but they're not the greatest, defensive duo, right? And they're not the guys that you kind of fear going at, if you look at our attackers. Their wingbacks, Daniel Munoz, of course, incredible business. You can't say enough about him. Tyreek Mitchell, homegrown, has done a good job for them. And then that kind of Christmas tree, attacking mids with Mateta. And of course, Mateta, perfect example of patience when you look at just his Palace career and how well he's done now for them. But Yeremy Pino, of course, sliding in for Eberici and has, started to really kind of acclimate towards Palace. And Ismail Assar has just been very good for them, right? So I think you look at that lineup, and I think there's a lot for us to be a little bit fearful of, just, going into, of course, a team that I didn't know if you know the guys, but they were 19 unbeaten. I heard that a few times on the telecast that the Palace was 19 unbeaten. I think I heard that more than 19 times, I would say. But yeah.
The telecast on so many I mean, as I was watching it, I wish that we had the Universario option just to listen to Cantor or something. It could have been in any language, frankly, would have been fine. They were atrocious. Yeah, I mean, looking at that lineup, I think there's some natural matchups that kind of come out of it. I know people love talking about Wharton like he's the greatest player in the history of mankind. I love trying to pick out flaws in his game just because it ticks people off. But in reality, I mean, he's still very much a developmental player on the defensive side of the pitch. I mean, he's 424th out of 432 in tackle percentages, by the way, challenges against. I like that one. That's a good one. He's been dribbled past a lot. He's got a great left foot, obviously. He's a very progressive player. He can ping it around a little bit and get up and down the pitch. But I just think that combination, him and Kamada, is not the strongest defensively, not the most athletic. I think the other matchup, I think that's very natural, is Munoz has been so good. Him and Chris Richards kind of tucking inside to support him against Jack's side. Could they slow down Jack? That's probably a good matchup for Palace in some ways. But the question is, can Munoz get up and down the pitch and put pressure behind Jack and really kind of force Everton to change things up? And I think it's also hard to ignore the tactical battle here. Glasner is a really interesting coach. He has a system that's fascinating, and David Moyes has gotten, I think we believe, a little bit predictable in his 4-2-3-1. So, gents, I think those are kind of the critical matchups when I look at this. I don't know if you have any other kind of ideas or thoughts before we get kind of into the action.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think you hit the nail on the head, and that was the major concern of Glasner's getting all these plaudits, rightfully so, for how well he set up this Palace team. Moyes, we've been a little critical. Don't think he's maybe doing enough to set the team up for success in certain areas, even though they are fairly limited based on the personnel in the existing squad. So how that would play out was a really interesting thing to think about. And he did make changes. Moyes did make changes, and he would make more throughout the match. But the way this started out was really interesting because Palace kind of utilizing set pieces. I mean, they had, 2 corners and a long throw within the first couple of minutes and eventually get their first shot. And they were really kind of all over us. I think Glasner certainly set them up for success in the early stages.
I almost felt like the set pieces helped Everton in a way because they were cutting us to pieces from open play. And I know that's hard to say when they've got 3 center backs and Mateta, who's a beast down the middle and can threaten the goal on set pieces, but in some ways I actually felt like it helped. Tactically, without getting in too much of it, we'll maybe analyze at the end of the half a little bit more, but there was so much space in between the lines, and that's part of the limitations here. I mean, Moyes seemed like he wanted to get up on them a little bit and put some pressure on them, and I think all that did is really stretch Everton out and create more distance between the lines, and that was always a safety valve. It looked like Palace would drop either Mateta back, or often the backside winger would drop in as well, leaving 2 guys into that space, and Tark and Keane do not want to come out, and we don't really have a natural 6, so when Garner and Ghana, and Njai playing down the middle was really ball side a lot and chasing. In fact, I'm surprised Palace didn't take advantage of the backside midfielder more often on a quicker ball rotation. Wharton in particular was open the whole time, and you're thinking, that is not who I want to be open with time and space with the ball. And I think it was very difficult. When Palace were poised and composed and getting on the ball, it was very difficult for Everton to disrupt their flow, and it was, let's be honest, it was an onslaught early.
It also felt like, for whatever reason, Everton just almost assumed that Palace, given the European fixture, would probably come out a little bit flat, and that was not at all the case. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not really what happened. I mean, maybe that was a bit of the tale of the game as we went on, but yeah, and I think, I mean, it wasn't just being outnumbered in midfield too, it was just positionally and how they were set up. But yeah, I mean, we were behind it the whole time, and it just, I mean, it took a while for us to generate anything.
It did, and Palace had a number of decent chances before they would eventually score. I mean, they were causing us those problems on long throws, as well as the abundance of space in the midfield. In the 19th minute, they had one that Richards gets to Lacroix, and Pickford has to parry it, which is actually a pretty good reaction save in the moment. And then in transition, they find Mitchell 1v1 versus Jake O'Brien, and he gets this shot that kind of deflects out of bounds off the bar. But a good opportunity. And again, Everton in possession was really, really heavily weighted to the left side. Dibling did not see much of the ball at all. They're cutting off the ball into Njai, and Mikolenko found himself on the ball a ton, pushed forward with not a lot of options to go to, almost like we were relying on him a little bit to be the creative outlet, like he hopefully could find Grealish, but they were just cutting off anything to Grealish as well. And it led to us, anytime we got forward, to just kind of being aimless and not really with a lot of intent.
Yeah, and I don't feel like Njai really got in a rhythm either there. And you would hope. I think I'm just disappointed that we weren't a little more pragmatic, actually. We didn't sit back and try and be a little bit more compact, knowing that they were probably going to come out in a different way. I just think turning the game, it's funny, interesting, later we turned the game into more of a vertical game, and I think it benefited us. But I think this lineup would have been better playing back behind the ball a little bit, maybe hitting them off the counter, but that's not really how Moyes wanted to set up. He had a lot of quotes after the match to talk about his setup that I thought were very interesting. That being said, there was a pretty big chance from Everton in the 34th minute, and this kind of came out of nowhere. But man, I mean, this is one where I'm not going to dip the whole has to, but it's one of those moments where you really kind of wanted Barry to kind of come alive, and it's kind of a reaction play by him. And I think the back line was a little fractured for Palace, leaving him on. And this cross comes in to Barry right on the 6, and he just kind of whiffs at it. Maybe he was put off a little bit by the defender, but geez, I mean, this would have been one where you would have hoped. I mean, granted, Palace would have been furious because they're thinking, how on earth are we down? But, I mean, really didn't come up with this one, but it kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, this is a chance, right, where Ryan, even if he gets his foot on it and Dean makes a great save, you're still, like, applauding the player. But I think it's just kind of unfortunately been the story of Thierno Barry when it comes to, being in front of goal. Granted, the chances really haven't been there, right? They've been few and far between, so I think that's a bit harsh on the player specifically. But then, of course, Everton right? A few minutes later with what happens. And it's just a tough moment, right? But it's also very deserved for Palace, just the way they came out.
And it was predictable, too. It was a play in between the lines, players coming back, in transition moment where we were too stretched out. And I think Pick is a little insane to come out the way he did. But I will say this, he came really close to saving this ball. And Munoz scores again, buries it, and we're down 1-0 and deserved to be. I mean, eventually we get to the first half. But, I mean, look at those numbers. They are incredibly one-sided.
Yeah, Palace deservedly ahead. I mean, they had 8 shots to our 2. Everton with a paltry 0.04 xG in the first half. I mean, that's pretty grim stuff from a creation standpoint. And then Palace with 0.63, but 5 shots on target. So Pickford, even though down 4 saves in the first half, a couple big chances. Palace had slightly more possession, but to your point, Ryan, I'm surprised we looked to go a little more toe to toe with them. To little effect. And you look at the kind of passing network between the players in the first half, and it is just very disjointed. I think Tyler Dibling in particular, just completely on an island. I don't think he had much of an opportunity to make an impact. He did have that one play where O'Brien kind of chips the ball over the top to him and he has space to run into. One of the few times we were actually able to break their lines over midfield and push forward, but the cross isn't very good. Other than that, he is completely isolated. A lot of the interplay taking place between Garner, Mikolenko, Grealish, and Barry to a limited extent on the other side. And it really it didn't look good. And frankly, at halftime, people were very doomsday about this match. Look, Everton were winless in 4 leading into it. You get 2 shots in the first half. It's an overreaction. I won't pretend it's not, but it looked pretty bad. It did.
It was pure domination, so I understand that. I was actually thrilled because I was thinking, wow, we're only down 1-0. This is a bloody miracle. Like, how the heck is this happening? There are a lot of quotes after the match from Moyes, too. We maybe could hit one or two here where, he mentioned, I guess this one was probably before, the system they play can be very hard to play against. And he talked about the balance of not wanting to make too many changes. And we have our way we want to play, and let's have at it. But I think that was a mistake. I think it was fairly obvious. And I can't blame the personnel changes on what we saw. You could say, well, maybe we weren't aggressive enough. And Moyes in the past this year has mentioned that the guys were not pressing the way he wanted to. But I just don't think you can pressure and get this team too far extended with this back line. And I thought it made it so much easier for Palace in the way they wanted to play that, I mean, almost it didn't really matter the individuals you'd have in there at all.
And the problem also, too, right, is these guys are press resistant in the sense of Yeremy Pino. You saw the way he kind of curled on the ball. Adam Wharton, right, he can hold the ball, and of course, the guys can distribute the ball. The center backs are good with the ball. So it's one of they can move the ball. So it's, I think, against West Ham or another team, that strategy might have worked, even though as clunky as it was with just the center backs being who they are, you can get away with it. But I think against Palace, that's how the first goal happened, right? In regards to just being able to turn really quickly. And then Mykolenko, it's just, given how far he had to push up, it forces Tark to defend essentially two positions when he couldn't defend anybody, right? And of course, like you mentioned, Pickford, I don't know what he's doing. He almost gets to it, but the angle was just way off because he was so far out. So it was just a situation where we just needed to, like you said, Ryan, be more compact, because there was no reason for us to be that aggressive because we weren't even getting the ball. Like,
I would argue the Palace wasn't even playing well.
Yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, they didn't finish well for sure. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think, like, they weren't that sharp. I think we made it that easy for them. Curious your thoughts on Pete Dodd's comment here. And some of these numbers, I think, especially on Mykolenko, were really interesting.
Yeah, Peter Dodds, 15 from X, said, it's not so much about the quote-unquote system or subs. It's more about the fact that we start games incredibly slowly with no aggression or intent, asking us to discuss. I do feel there was a little bit of lack of intensity from the start, but I don't think that was the main contributing thing. I do think the subs added a lot, and we'll talk about them momentarily, but the setup was just completely wrong. A half in which Vitaly Mykolenko has 20 touches more than the next highest player is just, that's not a recipe for success for this Everton team in any way, shape, or form.
So a couple thoughts on that. Sometimes when you bring in new guys into a team, even if you are playing a particular tactic, things are a little slower, a little more measured. So often teams that are aggressive are teams that are well prepared. They know exactly what their purpose is, and they can play faster either with or without the ball. Maybe that was a contributing factor to some aspect, but no, I felt like we tried to play aggressively up front, to Sean's point earlier, and it just didn't happen. I'd also argue I feel like we've started off several matches this year very well and somewhat on the front foot, and it's Moyes' subs on the back end and the lack of adjustments that have done us in. I don't think that was the story at all. That being said, we certainly weren't winning any battles in the first half, and I think the numbers show that.
Yeah, I think to Peter's point on low intensity, look, Everton won 41% of the duels in the half. We were 1 for 8 in dribbles as a team. Palace had 17 tackles to our 10 despite having more of the ball. Pick ends up with 4 saves and Everton with 2 shots. I do think the off-the-ball intensity, pressuring them on the ball, was slightly lacking, but I also think, to what Shan said a few moments ago, that's because they have guys on the ball, they move it quickly, you don't have the opportunity to really close them down.
I know, I just felt like they didn't even move it that quickly, too, So, I mean, there's probably a little truth in both of the arguments, but I still think the setup was just... I mean, I don't know if he looked lost or not, but we were throwing 2 midfielders at the ball at times where it's completely unnecessary and leaving the backside completely unmarked. I mean, it just made it too easy. Just retain the ball. So either you press or you don't. What did Ralph Ragnick said? It's like being pregnant. You can't be like partially pregnant or half pregnant. Yeah. You got to press. And I don't think we did that. So maybe it was a personnel issue. I don't know in terms of people not feeling it. But I think naturally in the second half, he had to make changes. Are we surprised about the substitutions? Because that's a pretty aggressive sub combo. I feel a little bit bad for these guys that got subbed off, but I mean, was it necessary?
Yeah, I think it was necessary because, as we've just mentioned, right, pretty grim half from Everton standards. I think you need to give a revitalization and credit to Moyes, right? I think he saw that the game needed to be changed, and I think he made as aggressive as subs as you can make with what he had available. Of course, Beto against those center backs, always a bit of a treat. But I think Charly, for him, it's just a really good opportunity, right? We've seen cameos of Charly, but to get an entire half, I think, especially with this setup, him kind of being in the middle and Njai pushed out right, finally kind of a position for him to feel a little bit more comfortable. And I think for all of us, it's just we want to see Charly do well, right? We want to see him get more minutes. And so for him to have this opportunity today and for Moyes to give it to him, I was appreciative of that.
I have no problem with the Beto sub either. I mean, Beto and Barry, as long as it's hard because it's a young player and you don't want to demoralize them, but I just view them as a duo. And I know people are talking about them like they're in competition, and they are to some extent. But I think what we should care about is the output at the position for Everton, not Barry versus Beto. I think Dibling's a little hard done here. I don't think he did a lot wrong. He didn't get the dribbles on, though.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers, I think it's fair to say both really struggled to impact the game in a meaningful way. If Barry had scored that goal, if he had just freed himself a little bit more on the back post, I don't know if that changes anything, but both had 19 touches, 0 for 5 combined in dribbles, and Barry was 3 for 6 in aerials, Dibling 3 for 9 in duels. So
is that on them, though, James, do we think?
I
mean, they got to take some responsibility and accountability for their actions,
Some of it is on them. I do think, to your point, it's a little harsh to yank them at halftime. Dibling was completely on an island. Barry didn't really have many chances to get involved, but you have to work with what you're given, and I don't think either of them did the most with those moments where they got the ball.
And look, Moyes, to his credit, at least was committed to putting pressure on, and I think he came out in the second half and said, look, we don't need to dial it back, because you saw them just killing our pressure, and we almost had to back off the second half of the first half. So coming out immediately, and I don't think we played all that well at first, at least the first 15 minutes. I mean, right away, though, you could see the energy. And look, Moyes was going to take a little more risk. He was going to push the back line up a little bit higher, and you saw some of that. Those guys don't look very comfortable playing that way. And you had Beto with some energy, too. So, I mean, look, the bottom line is Charly is more of a vertical player. He's more of a direct player. And Beto seemed energized by the sub as well and went in there with a purpose. And a lot of credit to both those guys. They were really playing physical, direct, active. And I think it's hard to argue that the mentality didn't change. And it certainly eventually paid dividends. But it was a little bit scattered the first part of the second half. I did have in the back of my head, and I don't know if you guys felt the same way, are they going to wear out? Is Palace going to really wear down? And that's one where you're like, well, maybe you should have waited a little bit later to make the changes and then hit them. But I think the sense of urgency made perfect sense. We looked so bad. I would have made some more tactical changes, but that's not necessarily Moyes' style. I mean, we really didn't see much, though, in terms of events in the match until like the 60th minute.
Yeah, and you see Palace, despite Everton, Charly comes on and looks more direct, looking to drive forward, which we know he loves to do.
Started to get more in transition, right, James?
For sure. It definitely started to look a little bit more end-to-end, and in that, Palace are still able to find a couple chances that I think they did rather poorly with. Probably could have been out of sight just in the first 15 minutes of the second half, but they're not able to finish, and we use that to our advantage later. And then Everton start to finally kind of get a foothold, get opportunities. There's the play where Ghana kind of goes super direct to Tark. He lays it off. Keno almost scores. I mean, the first chance is pretty cleanly deflected, like straight back at him. The second shot is pretty well struck, to be honest. But then almost immediately after, this is the end-to-end, right? Because Sarr gets around Pickford on the break, open net, everyone scrambling back to cover. It goes to Mateta, and Mateta fires it a foot and a half wide. This is a very close chance.
This may be the play of the match, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, this was like the pivotal moment that things really kind of changed. And also in combination with Keane getting hurt after this and bringing in Tim Irabunum, not the wizard, but yeah, I think that was absolutely critical. In fact, that now O'Brien can push up a little bit higher. I think he's a little more aggressive in terms of playing a higher line, and you move Jimmy Gardner over there to right back to give him a different look, knowing that Pino's probably already worn out. But look, Mateta buries this thing. This thing's over.
For sure. No doubt. I have no doubt about that. But, I mean, unfortunate Michael Keane gets injured. Looked like a back injury. Hopefully nothing serious. But we get to see Jake O'Brien at center back. This is like unbelievable stuff, guys.
I think on top of that, too, I mean, if you're really chasing a game and you need to go after these guys and put pressure and maybe get things a little chaotic and reckless. I think the Enchanter is the guy you want to bring in to put in the midfield. I mean, you put him in combination with Charly, with Beto firing on all cylinders, with Jake able to play a little bit higher because of his pace. And Garner is maybe not the greatest right back in a system that has to push higher, but he'll at least be aggressive in getting on the ball. And it's a risky lineup in many ways that could have ended up being 3-4-0 against us, but it seemed to be the right changes at the right time. And I think it was really encouraging that Moyes seemed to get a feel for the game and really make those right subs in the right way. And Tim had an impact.
Well, and I think also, too, the athleticism that we brought into the game with Tim, and then, of course, putting Garner right back, it just allowed him to be a little bit more assured just because just the midfield was everywhere in the wrong ways, most of that game with Ghana and just Garner just kind of getting out of position. And they did the best they could, right? It's not a matter of them specifically. So it just felt like a lot more organized. And as you mentioned, right, getting Jake to be a little bit higher, right, it could hide Tark's deficiency a little bit. So it just felt like we were, able to kind of compete with them on a stronger level going into, of course, what ends up happening in the 66th minute, which I have to give, first off, Charly so much credit for just essentially like having the kind of cojones to go for this head first and just looked like, the Energizer Bunny, right? As soon as he heads the ball and just, it's a really good shot. Dean gets a hand to it. And finally, like, Hill Dickinson, has woken up. Like, it just feels like we're starting to come into the game.
Yeah, and I think it culminates in this moment in the 67th, but it was kind of that combination of Matessa missing the big one, Tim coming in, Garner over to right back. Now you have that distributional ability at that side, too. You're not getting nothing out of the attack on that side. You have someone that can feed Njai if he needs to, no offense to Jake. This moment where Charly just smashes it with his left foot, mind you, almost went in. I mean, this was a tremendous strike. It's a fantastic save by Henderson. And then this moment, the 67th, you could tell everyone's starting to feel it and get antsy. And, this is the type of snidey type thing that you love to see players do sometimes. But I would say this one backfired a little bit on him.
Yeah, I think this really kind of brought the crowd to a furor and frustration that we just have not really seen at the Hill Dickinson. And really, obviously not being there, but the atmosphere was dead. First half, it was pretty brutally quiet. In this moment where Pino, tries to encroach on the free kick, and then Garner's kind of like, he's not 10 yards. You have to make him go 10 yards. And the ref looks to his assistant and then just says, get on with it. And the crowd has had enough. You get the boos and really, honestly, nothing has energized Everton fans in the last few years, like something to get really angry about. Usually the referee. This does it. Crowd gets fired up. And I think it really helped kind of galvanize the team from that point forward. And just 6 minutes later, it's Tim Irabunum with the impact. Tim's involved very early on, deep in kind of our half, and then he makes this run.
I mean, this is kind of what you want him doing, right?
Yeah, it's just kind of a sneaky run. He loses the defense. Lacroix is completely unaware. He's trying to mark Beto, who's making the run kind of over the top. Tim sneaks in on that backside, and Lacroix goes to ground and takes Tim out. I mean, it's a stonewall pen. Tim's probably looking for it at that point, but oh my God, did we just get thrown a lifeline?
Yeah, it didn't feel like it was particularly deserved. And Njai, cool as you like, of course, finishes it. I like his penalties. He's very confident in them. His technique's pretty good as well, too. It's nice to have just phenomenal balance and power, even from like a standstill, even if he stops. But yeah, it's a really heads-up play by Tim. And that's Tim on his front foot playing aggressively is what you want from him. You don't want him thinking too much out there, frankly. It sounds a little harsh, but it's true. And I think most of us are just laughing at this point, thinking, "Wow, this is 1-1." And then we just were going at it this time. It's like, and the question is, did they wear out? I don't know. We could talk about it in a second when we get into some of the analysis and the numbers, but we were just like the irresistible force here for a while.
Yeah, I genuinely feel like we wore them down in the athletic just midfield that we started to bring in. Beto causing their center backs just, annoyance, whereas I think Thierno Barry just didn't have it, in regards
to... He's a handful, Sean.
Yeah,
I mean, even when he's not playing well, he is a pain.
Yeah, and for them, right, this is an unfamiliar feeling, playing on Thursday, going into Sunday, right? They probably expected to skate by with how that first half went. I think it was a bit of a culture shock to just kind of see the stadium essentially just rise up, and then for them to kind of now be in a dogfight just to get a point after dominating for so long. And for us, credit to the Blues for just continuing to kind of put the pressure on them. They could have easily tried to just kind of bunker down and try to hold for a point, but I think the team saw an opportunity, right, to kind of take it to them, and I think we have Yeremy Pino to thank, right, just with just that moment, because it felt like everything just kind of went for us after that.
He's such a good player, by the way.
He is, really.
This too, and 8 minutes of stoppage time was a lot, but okay, fine. We were thrilled to see that at home. Although there were some moments there in about the 80th to the 90th where Palace actually looked a little bit dangerous. But when extra time hit, like, bam, we just came alive. And this felt like maybe the first kind of seminal moment in the short history so far of Hill Dickinson, don't we think? Because what a moment this was.
Yeah, and it honestly was, in some ways, almost anticlimactic. And it's, of course, the Jack Grealish goal, which should have been the Beto goal. But everything about this play is really fantastic, starting with Njai to create the space, to get to the touchline, to get that cross in. I know he's probably gotten a lot of credit for this, but Beto's header is like almost perfect. Besides putting it like one side or the other, heads it down with power, forces Henderson to make a really difficult reaction save, and then Grealish crashing net, preventing the clearance. It deflects off him, goes in, and you get the 136 decibel sound of the crowd going wild at the winner, which obviously wasn't that loud because everyone's eardrums would have like exploded, but it was a really, really, like you said, the first seminal moment, the first late winner in the history of the stadium, and hopefully that made all of the Toffees feel really special and at home finally.
I don't know if I've ever seen a low header with this much power. This was hammered. I mean, that's what you want to do. You want to hit it down. People said side to side, but he can't go left. There's a player there. And if he goes right, I mean, that cross was fizzing over. I don't think it's unreasonable to think the keeper maybe should have been there. So I got no problems with that shot. He got lucky as heck to save it. Maybe Grealish got lucky on the rebound. But yeah, the reactions of the players at that time was pretty interesting.
Njai's reaction was everyone in the stands. You see him on the touchline. He goes out of bounds. He sees Beto miss the header. He goes hands over his head and then just goes nuts celebrating. I mean, it was really special. It really was.
Also, credit to Charly. I mean, for that direct pass. I thought he, and of course we'll get to it, just ounce, so much energy, but also so much quality to go with that. And it was just, kind of fitting for him to start that movement. But like you mentioned, that header, I mean, if that hit a stranger, that would have been assault. I mean, that's how hard that header was. And for whatever reason, Liverpool fans decided to celebrate with us too, because they were just, on every social platform. Turns out, Palace is now the equalizer, which is so odd to me, just because, they beat them last week, that, they hate them. But just an incredible moment. Moment.
Yeah, I mean, the crowd was going absolutely bonkers. That would have been a fun one to go to. I'll say that for sure. Full time, I mean, it's hard to ignore the impact that the subs made and the changes in the second half happened. It's funny at the end of the day. I mean, granted that the penalty is a big part of it, but the XG numbers were overwhelming in favor of Everton. Look, there were a lot of reasons for that and for the result. Maybe it was fortunate, maybe it wasn't, but some of the aspects of things, like the second half pass map, was really interesting. It was left-sided, but certainly more balanced. It looks odd, the average positions, every time someone changes position like Garner did, it's kind of messes it up. But, I mean, I think the tail of it was, Palace's passing was 84% and lots of long stuff in the first half, dropping down to 77%. And the touches in the box was a complete reversal. It was 7-14 in Palace's favor in the first half. The second half, it was 21-9 for Everton. And these numbers from the Yeremy Pino incident onward is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I alluded to it earlier. I mean, it was all Everton after the crowd kind of got into it and got fired up. 7-3 in shots, 61% possession for Everton, almost 80% passing to Palace's 66. We won more aerials, 10-6. They out-tackled us slightly, but Everton 5 for 5 in tackles overall. So volume-wise, not quite there, but we're winning the ones that we went into and did so effectively.
I think it's also interesting to kind of revisit some of the matchups a little bit. In particular, the tactical battle, the coach versus coach matchup. James, I think it was you who wrote this in here. Reactive first half, compared to a more proactive second half. that's an interesting way to look at it in terms of effect. I don't know if that was what Moyes' intent was. Tim on our Discord mentioned Moyes made adjustments and they worked fair play. This one's hard because, I mean, you have to criticize him for the setup in the first half, whether it was a poor setup or the guys were not well-versed in the setup, the approach. And I think if you look at the subs, Charly, Beto, the Enchanter, I think El Pivote makes an interesting comment here. Did subs change the game or did Palace tire after European exploits and Everton took advantage? 3 points is 3 points at the end of the day, right? So, who cares how we got there? Well, we do because we do the post-match pod. I'm curious what you all think about who is to blame, who is to credit on this. Is this Palace just running out of gas, or is this a Moyes second half masterclass?
Yeah, so I would say it's a little bit of everything, right? And I think for me, when I look at, just their midfield, right? Like we talked about it, Kamada and Wharton, right? You don't really have many battlers in there. So when they can't really bring on Will Hughes, which I can't believe, it's 2025 and we're talking about Will Hughes in a positive way, that hurts them, right? I think Jefferson Lerma is just not the player that Will Hughes is when it comes to, I think, just the athletic midfield we started to bring in when we had Charly, Tim, you put Garner at right back. But then also, too, I think as James put it perfectly, we just didn't come out with the right tactics. We were very reactive. We just thought that they'd kind of almost, from the European trip, I would say, just walk in and just kind of give us a match, and they just absolutely handed it to us. So credit to them, but then credit to us for really kind of responding. And I just feel like the players also stepped it up in the second half too. I think there were some performances in the first half that were not good, and there were guys that in the second half that were still on the pitch that were much better in the second half.
Yeah, I agree that everything kind of plays into it. Palace definitely wore out. But you still have to have the guys take advantage. And I don't think you can look at, how ineffective, unfortunately, Dibling and Barry were in the first half, contrasted with the impact that all three subs made on the game, and not give David Moyes credit for being so proactive. We've criticized him enough this season about waiting too long to make subs, not making the subs. When he does, especially Charly, but everyone played a role in some major moments in that second half, you got to tip your hat to the guy. And again, to the players for taking their chance, and really Charly, who has got to feel like he's been a little bit on the fringes, despite just signing a new deal, and we know maybe Moyes doesn't like him that much, got to put his flag in the ground today, or Sunday.
Well, he absolutely did, but I also think it, and maybe the flow of the match and the style of play favors him a bit. I don't think, and I think we saw at Flamenco with him and Juve, when he was on teams that dominated the ball and he had to kind of come back from the play between the lines or play with his back to goal, he wasn't as good. But running with the ball, attacking, more in the counter, in transitionary moments, he is deadly. He could score with his right foot in particular, or his left was impressive. To me, fatigue's a big element here. I put these two charts in our document, which I'll put on the Discord later. It's the PPDA models for the match for both teams, and it's funny because you saw Everton's just drop from about the 15th minute on, and it's mostly Palace figuring us out. You could have all the impetus in the world, it didn't matter, the tactics were not there was time and space everywhere, and then you saw us just ratchet it up from halftime, and then Palace make the slow decline as the match went on, a little bit of last minute effort there, but certainly not enough. And our numbers were finishing at like 8.4. They were down to 38. Higher numbers, less pressure in like the 70th minute or so. So I think fatigue had a big part about it. I think Moyes wanted to make some maybe more changes and play more aggressively, and has some limitations from a personnel standpoint. So I'm not going to say it wasn't his tactical ideas. There's only so much he can do with this team. What about some of the other matchups here, too? We went over them at first. What about the battle of the midfield? Because I would argue Kamada actually was very much an unsung hero today. He won 11 out of 15 duels. Munoz won the most duels at 13, but I'd even argue he slowed down a little bit, and Grealish could have his way a little bit more in the left side, maybe in the last 20 minutes. Adam Wharton had one of the stranger matches I've ever seen. He had 4 fouls. You know how many fouls he had in the Premier League leading up to this one? 0. He had a foul in the Community Shield. That's it. That's what the numbers say. I don't know if that's true. It seems hard to believe because I think he's a little bit aggressive, but that's what all the numbers say. Whatever. He had 6 crosses, only 7 coming into the match in the Premier League. I took 3 corners, whatever. Just very strange. I mean, I don't know. I still saw some problems, though, with pushing up the back line, and I felt like still we were exploitable in the second half, but that's why I feel like Palace probably just ran out of gas a little bit.
Well, not even necessarily. Yes, they both ran out of gas, but also they had still opportunities in like the 60th, 70th minute that they just didn't take.
Well, that was a big part of the game, right? That's a big theme here.
100%. I mean, you have to, and they'll look at it as we just didn't execute well enough in front of goal. Stuff, you can't really blame them for being tired. Like, maybe some fitness exercises. Glasner needs to pull out the old bleep test for these guys in the midweek.
Well, if he wants to change his story in the second half, I mean, those are the types of things you have to do. But look, and goalkeeping matters too, and not that. I mean, Pickford, I thought the goal maybe wasn't his best effort, but he was fantastic outside of that. And that stuff matters. I mean, finishing and goaltending, I mean, it's the game outside of the game. Matters a lot in terms of the results. That's why we have XG. Whether it's deserved or not is another story. What are your thoughts about Moyes' quotes kind of afterwards about, what the score should have looked like in the first half? I mean, I don't think he's way off here.
You don't really see this honesty from a manager, and so I can respect Moyes here because he's right. I mean, quotes are Crystal Palace should have been out of sight. I'd agree. They should have been 3-0 up, but we stuck at it. We kept defending. Eventually, we got a little bit of good fortune. I think it'd be wrong not to praise Crystal Palace for how well they played in the first half. I mean, I think he's right. I don't think anybody would disagree, but I would also kind of counterpoint to say, how many times have we been the better team, right, to just continue to kind of, also under Moyes, also under Dyche, where, I can remember a 1-0 Wolves loss at home to start the season where we had chance after chance after chance, and we lose, right? And
Fulham
unfortunately,
at home.
Yeah, Fulham at home,
God.
yeah. It's
Guys.
just, there's...
For those of Wolves like you do, Sean.
Yeah. So I only say that to say I see a lot of our community just almost be like, oh, it was an undeserved win. I'll take as many undeserved wins as we can get, right? Because at the end of the day, they still won the game. They still did what they needed to do in the second half.
That's
I think
football.
There's a lot. Yeah, that's football. And at the end of the day, these things even out, right? Nottingham Forest is seeing that alive and well this year. So it's just one of those things where for us, I feel like we also earned it. It's not like we just got super lucky and didn't do anything to win the game. We did.
Yeah, 100%. And look, okay, if you're the better team for the majority of the minutes of the match, you deserve to win. Palace were probably the better team for 60-ish. But again, from that foul onwards, once the crowd got into it and really the intensity ramped up and Palace started to wane, Everton were far better. And okay, the penalty is a bit of luck, but we desperately needed that. We still created a number of very good chances. And I think ultimately you do enough to win. It would have felt if that Grealish chance deflects wide or something like that and we settle for a draw, I would have said we deserve to win that one late.
Well, the one thing I'll say is that it does show you a little bit of the flaws of this Palace team. I don't think they have enough depth to deal with this European escapade thing. They faded off badly. Yes, the Everton bench players deserve credit for taking initiative, but this is also Moyes using his bench better probably than Glasner did. And I think that's an okay storyline here, and I think Moyes deserves credit, even if he also deserves some flack for how poorly he had to set up. I mean, just the concept does bother me a little bit. I have to admit, it's I don't want to change too much in response to them, but they have a very solid system. These guys have all been I mean, there's some changes with SA and things like that, but the back line's the same. The midfielders are there. I think you have to change more, but I view the game probably a little bit more tactically than maybe he does. And I can't argue there was some truth to the mentality changing in the second half mattered. And that was driven by individual performances probably as much as anything. I don't think it was a rah-rah speech at halftime. You never know. I wasn't in there. There still were some good performances. And it's what we talked about. The story of the game in terms of the results sometimes is impacted by finishing and goalkeeping. And I think that was the story today.
Ryan, are you saying that they didn't play the 3-2 Crystal Palace highlights at halftime?
Probably not. But, I mean, the truth of the matter is that if you look at top performances, I mean, James got in the document first, of course, but...
Yeah, but I gave you guys low-hanging fruit. I mean, I picked I went with Pickford.
Oh, I thought he was the player of the match. What are you talking about, man?
Oh,
he
I
was
don't
the
think
difference
that-
maker to me, for sure.
I mean, I think obviously the 4 saves in the first half. I think he finished with a couple more than that. Again, Palace didn't have to make a lot of great saves in the second half, but 4 first half saves kept us in that match. To Moyes' comments, to the comments we've made already, Palace could easily have been out of sight, especially that reaction one on the deflection. I mean, he does so well there. And really, the game got chaotic late when Palace threw Henderson forward, and it got a little bit. I mean, the ref was just letting the clock run. You're into minute 100 at one point. Pickford kept his cool. He almost lost it a little bit, but kept his calm. Had a good parry late, and I think just did a really good job seeing out the match. And for that reason, I give him my tip of the cap for the day.
He's gotten a lot better at fighting through traffic at times. I still think there's some problems in terms of how teams stack that 6-yard box. You got to fight those guys off and allow your goalie some sort of mobility, but his ability to punch the ball has gotten a little bit better for a guy that supposedly has short arms. Kudos to him. I thought he was the man of the match. You weren't doing me a favor. I think Charly was a match changer today, and it's hard to ignore that. I mean, he got on the ball a lot, 34 touches in 45 minutes for a guy that's supposedly playing as a 10, and he was dropping deeper, and I think that's what was needed, and turning and running with the ball more. 2 shots, smashed left footer for sure, 1 key pass, 1 dribble. But what was key to me is he played with that kind of recklessness and aggressiveness and only had 1 bad touch and 0 dispossessions. 2 tackles, 3 for 5 in ground duels, 5 recoveries. That right there is not always the most meaningful stat, but that's really important for us because it's scooping those balls up and taking it forward. It's the stuff that Decore used to do in his prime, but Charly's a little more dangerous as, not that Decore was a bad goal scorer really, but it's that work rate, that initiative. That's what we really needed at the time. So I'm not going to say that he played with the utmost quality and, changed the game himself on his own accord, but certainly was a critical component of it. But I'm sorry, James, and Pickford doesn't make those saves in the first half. It doesn't matter. But yes, their finishing wasn't good either. So, it's hard to argue against that one. I'm really surprised at what Shan went with, though, in terms of top performances. He really went out of the blue in this one.
Even when I was in Canada, people knew that, my man of the match was James Garner. No surprise, 95.7% pass accuracy, 2 key passes, 1 tackle, 2 interceptions, 3 clearances, 1 block shot, 3 for 6 on crosses, 2 for 3 on long balls. I want to say I'm not giving him man of the match for his time in midfield. I'm giving it for 2 reasons. I thought he did actually a pretty good job when he got put it right back, but he also kept Nathan Patterson and Seamus Coleman on the bench. So, the idea of just a Swiss Army knife, which is what he's turned into, he might be the only player for Everton that's played every position by the end of the season, because it feels like he is played left back, right back, midfield, which is not a credit to our situation right now as a team, but. No, I give him credit just because I think overall he had a pretty decent match, and it's just another thankless, kind of job that he's put into to kind of have to play a position that he's unfamiliar with and does a good job.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it when he moved to right back. He was still kind of drifting a little more centrally to try to get on the ball. He just likes to receive the ball and move the ball around, and he does so accurately. That cross that he put into Barry in the first half, a couple other actually pretty dangerous crosses. I know this is your recurring bit at this point, but he is earning honorable mentions at the very least for his performances. He has been quite good. That looks past the fact of just how cut apart he and Ghana were in space in the first half. But regardless, the outcome is the outcome, and I think you're right to choose him. So well done. We had a couple other listener comments here. Rhetoric, who said, it also seems like Charly gives us a more balanced threat to the right. And then JDFC, Charly was actually receiving the ball on the half turn too, which wasn't happening in the first half. Thoughts on that, guys? Charly definitely was able to link up with Njai quite a bit more, whereas Dibling was not really getting the ball at all.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think in the numbers pointed out too. I mean, if you look at kind of past combinations and whatnot, 7 combinations between Charly and Njai, and that's all second half, right? 6 were Charly finding Njai. And I think in this instance, Garner's a little bit more of a threat with the ball. Njai could maybe sneak a little bit more in the half space. And I just think we were pushing enough numbers up forward that it made it a little bit easier for him. But that's key. I mean, you can't just feed it all to Jack every single time and make it all predictable. That being said, I do kind of wonder how Dibling would have done in the same situation. I really feel like we didn't do a very good job getting him in the ball. I still like Dibling carrying the ball. I think he could have neutralized a little bit some of the things that they were doing. That being said, I think the right side of our team was good defensively throughout the match in general. It wasn't a situation like last match where they were losing the ball a lot and not defending very well. So that's a nice thing. It was nice to turn on some of the attacking impetus later in the match. I still don't like, though, some of this messaging around Dibling and Barry and some of these, and I put this in the document, and maybe I shouldn't have done this, but I'm doing it anyway.
It's Michael Ball roast hour right now.
Well, whatever. I'm using it as an illustration of several people. I've got nothing personally against Michael Ball, but I'm going to read the quote, and it's, spent a lot of money on Tyler, and the pressure is on him. His job is to create opportunities. That's your job. The games seem to bypass him. You want to see more from your most expensive signing of the summer. You want to see an instant impact. No, you don't. Honestly, I couldn't agree with this more. It doesn't matter what you spend on a guy. That's the market bearing this. It means absolutely nothing. We spent nothing on a transfer fee for Grealish. Do you expect less than it? It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the market. It has to do with the situation. This is such a ridiculous comment on so many. His job is not just to create opportunities. He's 19. Like, cut him a break. This was an opportunity for him. But it's a team sport. Like, how is he supposed to magically conjure up the ball at his feet running at someone? You can't create opportunities if you don't see the ball in the final third. I mean, what does he want him to do? Like, drop back 50 yards, pick it up, and dash around everyone like he's freaking Messi? And he can actually carry the ball pretty well. So, no, you don't want to see an instant impact either. He's 19. It doesn't matter what you paid for the guy, for heaven's sakes. And I don't think he was a problem. Sometimes it's the position you're putting a player in. That's why some players do well with certain clubs, do well in certain environments. Why do we think Njai has not scored from open play playing the right wing? Because he's playing the right wing. Like, do you not know that? He's more of a goal threat on the left side. Hooray. It's stuff like this, too, that I know it's almost like rage bait. But, like, just take a step back here, Michael, and everyone really think about this. This is just preposterous. The game didn't bypass him any more so than any other player on the team.
What are you talking about? Bypassed our midfield, that's for sure.
Right.
At least in the first half.
Up. Like, do you not see what you're watching here? This guy has been around football his life. He knows better than this. So I don't know if he's just trolling or anything. That being said, no problem with the sub, though. I mean, I think Bluis hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, Bluis said no, but was a necessary sacrifice to shake things up regarding Dibling's performance. Don't think he was given much of an opportunity to do anything. I think that's exactly right. And I don't think really, thus far in his Everton career, he's been given much of an opportunity to do a whole lot. And that's why I can see the thought process behind Michael Ball's comments. You spend a lot of money on a guy, maybe the average person thinks that they should impact games, but to say the pressure is on him, there should be no pressure for Tyler Dibling. He should be able to feel...
Does he think the club is like, hey, you're going to be our biggest signing, the pressure's on you, we need you to deliver? No, you're buying him mostly for potential, man.
Right.
It's so absurd on so many levels, and I think some of the stuff on Thierno Barry's not okay either. And I think IR Ferg, Blue Wave Kit Truther, wow, that's a heck of a mouthful right there, I think says it right too about Barry. New country, new team, new language. It's not a seamless adjustment for every person. I was listening to a pod today talking about how Moyes Keane might be an $100 million striker if he continues on the rate he does now because of the marketplace for center forwards and his ability to score. It's the same thing. People are like, well, he wasn't good enough for the Premier League, or he was 19 years old, man. The next year he went and knocked in 16 for PSG. He was second in Serie A on goals scored last year. What are you talking about? And I just think there's context around the situation these guys are in. Would I have liked to see Barry get his foot on that cross? Yes, I would have. And I look forward to him scoring. But dear heavens, guys, get a grip. I just can't believe you print and react like this. Like, I don't know. It just bothers me. It's just, it's archaic thoughts, man. It's just, the transfer fee is so high, we expect more from him. I'm sorry, man. This is not 1982.
Also, last I checked, Everton has 11 points. We're eighth in the table. It's not like, we have 3 points. We haven't done anything of note. Like, why is the pressure on Tyler Dibling specifically? Like, it makes, first, like as you mentioned, he's 19. Also, I think just in regards to the Charly comments, Tyler's just, he wasn't put in a position to succeed, but then also, too, Charlie's just a more direct player, right? So he just took the game a little bit more, and the setup was different. So,
yes, exactly.
Yeah. So this idea that, like, it's no different than what you're saying, Ryan, the Barry Beto competition, right? It's just like, at the end of the day, you have to see them as one. If one guy does well, great. Like, it takes pressure off the other guy. Right.
And I'll say this too, Sean. Yeah. What do you think happens if Dibling comes in and is subbed in the last 15 minutes against this team that clearly had dead legs from playing Kiev in Poland, I might add, which is odd, on Thursday? You think Tyler Dibling's going to look better? Yes, of course he is. Like, what are we talking about here, man? I mean, but it's not. The thing is, like, if we ever want to compete again at the top of the table, how else are we going to do it? In order to compete with the Arsenal or Liverpools of the world, like, you need world-class players, or at least close to it, at every position. No joke, at every position. We can't just go buy them. Like, you can't just go drop $100 million on one player multiple times in a window. So in order to do that, you're going to have to invest in some young players and develop them. Like, cut the kid a break. And just the lack of understanding of circumstance, to your point, Sean, and tactics really bothers me, and it's not fair. I like Tyler Dibling. I thought he did fine.
I will say, though, that Thierno Barry is a slow starter, right? In regards to, you look at his time at Basel, you look at his time at Villarreal. Like, it's not, and he's also, like we've mentioned, he's young. So for whatever reason, like,
and raw a little bit too, Sean. You know, he's not
young,
not that
raw,
polished.
Like,
you know.
And he's also, I think, from a physical standpoint, right, this league is a little bit of a challenge for him, right? And I think it's going to take time for him to adjust. But for whatever reason, our fan base just, like, judges a striker as, like, a statue of perfection, right? Like, I mean, you look even in the days of Romelu Lukaku, right? They said he was lazy. He was like,
his goals didn't matter.
Yeah, his goals didn't matter.
That was my favorite one.
Yeah, so there's just, like, for every striker that's done something even at our club, right? We just have to kind of recognize that it's like, if you're not scoring goals, you're going to get criticized, which we all know is very unfair, but that's just kind of the harsh truth. Whereas Tyler Dibling, I think, is a little bit more harsh for Michael Ball, just because at the end of the day, his output shouldn't be measured with goals and assists. It should just be with just, hey, getting more confidence within the team, understanding what Moyes wants from him, and just continuing to build into the squad, right? So,
and no one has said from the club or any analyst that knows anything about football has said he's supposed to make an immediate impact. That is
Moyes in his pressers, has consistently said about both Tyler Dibling and Thierno Barry. Thierno Barry, right? He's young. He's just trying to get up to speed. And the same thing with Tyler Dibling, right? Like, it's just, I don't understand, like, why just, especially after a 2-1 win, that they're coming after him.
Yeah. I think other beyond that too. I mean, you'd have to be on an island to not see how we've been playing on the right side too. It's not like Njai's been lighting it up there, really a goal threat. So you got to cut Dibling a little. None of that should have been all that surprising, you know. And Charlie did a really good job of forcing the ball to Njai. If he forced it to Dibling, maybe things would have been different too. And people got to remember, the center forwards right now are designed to occupy the center backs and deal with them. It was interesting though, dropping Charlie deeper gave Beto now room to make some of those diagonal runs. Unless you're just blind as a bat, like, that should have been pretty obvious. Like the prior match where Dewsbury Hall was making those runs against a Nuno team that was sitting deeper, that was obviously the center forward couldn't make those runs. And that was my tirade last pod. But it's the same thing. Like, recognize what we're trying to do and what's available. You know, Barry didn't have the opportunities either. He had one big opportunity. It's really hard to go in and have one opportunity every match and that's it. And look, I mean, he's far from DCL finishing wise. Let's see how it goes. Sorry, I had to get a shot in there somehow.
Just taking shots at DCL. He's out the door.
Blues still nails it here, though, right? I mean, we were bad. We still won, right?
It's really quite that simple. And really, this Everton team, you can't be too upset about that in a transition year. We were poor. We beat the last unbeaten team in the Premier League at home, gave the home fans their first very memorable finisher at the Hill Dickinson. It was phenomenal. And you win ugly, it's not so bad. I think Team, we now head into the international break, a couple weeks to get into training, to gel a little bit more, to familiarize themselves with one another.
We earned it though too, James. I mean, to your
Yes.
point, we earned it at least with the blood, sweat, and tears, man. I mean, we absolutely did. The initiative was there. The crowd got behind them too, and it was just a really cool moment. Maybe we should have been down 3-0, whatever. But the point is, at least the effort was there. That's all you can really ask for, man. Some guys are going to play well, some guys aren't. At a minimum, if you're playing at home in front of that crowd, they demand the effort and the work rate, and they did return that, and I'm glad that it turned out into a fantastic moment as well.
We changed the story and we changed the bio.
There we go. That's pretty good, man. Palace's X bio.
That was nice.
That was well played. All right. Well, we explained the joke in case you didn't get it. And with that, we go into Everton's schedule. We, of course, have the international break, the second too early international break of the season already. Then we go away to face Man City. We play Spurs at home at the Hill Dickinson. We'll get to have the face-off of the new stadium clubs. At Sunderland versus Fulham at home, and then Manchester United. So schedule continues to ramp up, to get difficult, but
It's a
beat
tough
Palace.
league, man. It's a tough league.
It's a tough league. You beat Palace, the possibilities are endless. We broke the winless streak, and it's a good note to go into the international break on, without a doubt.
Yeah, I think we can break down the City match too later. We've got to do some stuff during the break. I think you can anticipate some content for that, especially with Jack not being able to play. Score predictions, though, we got a few guys got it right.
Yes, myself, I got it right. Mike, Wombat Combat, Sleazy, Andy Swill, Kaelden, Winfreaky, Juan, Joe Scheidt, and Bluefink. So congrats to all.
That's a motley crew right there.
Yeah, 2-1. 2-1. I mean, it's just it's a very Everton Palace score. And just for whatever reason, Palace has turned into our bogey team. So we thank you, Crystal Palace, for your service.
No, we are their bogey team. We are Palace's
sir.
bogey team.
Sorry,
And
yes.
nowhere is that emphasized more than this from Op to Joe. Everton have won just 3 of their last 31 Premier League matches where they've conceded first, but all 3 have come against Crystal Palace. 3-2 in May 22, 2-1 in September 2024, and 2-1 today. The streak finishers. Thank you, Crystal Palace. We appreciate you for your service. As Ryan said, we're going to probably do something over the international break, so stay tuned. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I know it's a little late, but we've had quite the busy schedules personally as of late, so no sweat. Hope you still enjoy it. Reminder to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us, leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Definitely join our Discord, all that good stuff. Socials, everything will be in the link in the description. Appreciate you all. Until next time, up the Toffees.